Beloveds. As we enter into spring of 2025, I just think about how the veil is really being lifted of white settler colonialism and cis heteropatriarchy and the many ways we dehumanize people and the deep disparity between the ruling class, the wealthy ruling class, and everybody else. And I'm really excited about the ways in which I am trying to anchor myself and trying to wade through, how can I still be mobilized into action? Antiracism Revolution, which I started in April of 2022, is reaching its 3-year anniversary. And I've loved the ways in which it has evolved over time as I've evolved over time. And so I just want to thank all of you who have been here since April of 2022. And those who have come since, and also honoring those who have come and gone. And I just wanted to kind of update people on kind of where I'm at these days, what I'm really interested in bringing into the community in the next year. And, I think one is, how do we befriend rage and liberation? How do we honor the ways in which we go into fight or flight or freeze or fawn, collapse? And how do we resource ourselves in a way that allows us to work on being good ancestors, to really be accomplices and equity brokers in a time when we're encouraged not to talk about structural racism and the many other words that we're encouraged not to address, which really is a way to continue to target the most vulnerable among us and to continue to look at the ways in which state-sanctioned violence particularly targets Black, Brown, Asian, Indigenous, trans, non-binary, undocumented, and even documented individuals. And so how do we build our racial literacy, fluency, and agility, right? So principles from my book, Mindful Race Talk, continue to be something I look at and integrating to the community, thinking about somatic practitioners and the way that they talk about 300 repetitions builds muscle memory and 3,000 repetitions builds embodiment. So how do we embody principles of anti-racism and anti-oppression, and how do we decolonize? Probably my favorite book in adulthood is Hospicing Modernity by Vanessa Machado de Oliveira. And what I appreciate that she talks about in the chapter, she says the most important chapter, where she encourages you not to read the book because it really focuses on depth education, which is uncomfortable. But how are we going to interrogate all the ways we've been indoctrinated, all the ways we've been socialized? But one of the things she talks about in that chapter is that one, how do we hospice, right? Using hospice as a verb, right? That these interlocking systems of oppression, that modernity is like there's all the wonderful things that come with progress of technology, and there's also horrors that come with that. And how do we hospice, like with great care and tenderness, recognize that it's time to end this thing that no longer serves us and our humanity, but that there are those 3 different strategies for change. One is soft reform. So how are the ways we can reform or tweak around the edges, which really encourages assimilation and integration. Next is radical reform. We really see that unequal playing field, that these systems are really cooked, as my kids would say. And how do we make significant changes, and really focus on anti-racism or whatever the justice issue you have, but it's often focused on one issue. And then there's kind of the third way. Some would call that abolition, some would call that beyond reform. I'm just going to call it the third way, right? How do we imagine some other way that we can be together, that we can co-create it? What can we do in our circles of influence? And so we're continue to process the content of that book and think about, how do we even soft reform, radical reform in a third way? And we need community to do that. We need to be taking care of ourselves. And we need to be searching out other media other than mainstream media that is only going to tell us a censored version of truth. So I love that we have these monthly gatherings, the Wednesday gathering, the Friday gathering, and the others gatherings that are sprinkled throughout. I love hearing how people are impacted and how can I help support learning different skills and inviting in conversations that we don't typically have, right? I want to continue to tie my Black liberation to Palestinian liberation and the liberation of all beings. I want to continue to combat Islamophobia, anti-Arab racism, anti-Palestinian racism, while also continuing to combat anti-Semitism. I want us to be looking at the intersection of race and class. I want us to be honoring the fluidity of gender, of sexuality, of the ways we learn, of the ways we embody things. I want to move beyond multiple truths to kind of how it's all interconnected. It's more circular. I want us to develop a different relationship to the land, to nature, to each other. And I'm always wanting to bring mindfulness and a sense of right here, right now, what's the vibe? What's happening in my nervous system? How do we really bring trauma sensitive, trauma informed, trauma responsive care into our relationships? So I hope that you will join me on the journey, wherever you may be. And even if I'm not the right guide for you, and my community is not right for you, I hope that you find your people, that we're all moving towards some level of collective liberation, that we're imagining something different than what we're living right here, right now in the United States. So take good care.